got tons. I saw the pockets of fire. We should never knock it down 2 lines. Where you know that? 78th floor. Look, we got tons. I saw the pockets of fire. We got tons.
Isolated pockets of fire. 2 water lines to knock them down. FEMA's executive summary relays that much of the fuel in the planes, jet-grade kerosene, was consumed by the initial fireballs and the following few minutes of fire.
The Twin Towers were composed of 200,000 tons of steel and 425,000 cubic yards of concrete. The core of each tower was a rectangular pillar 87 by 133 feet, comprised of 47 steel box columns ranging from 36 by 16 to 52 by 22 inches. An analysis released in 1964 claims that the buildings were investigated and found to be safe in an assumed collision with a 707 traveling at 600 miles per hour. Such collision would result in only local damage which could not cause collapse or substantial damage to the building.
Inside there was the core, a rectangle of 47 columns made of 4-inch thick steel at the base, thinning with increasing height. The cores combined might with ingenuity. The story we were told: this rock-like steel grid gave way because fire warped the trusses, causing the bolts to fail. As the trusses sagged and fell, the floors dropped with them. In its 2002 documentary, Why the Towers Fell, PBS creates a video model.
Once the trusses fail, the floors they were holding cascade down with a force too great to be withstood. The result is what's called a progressive collapse, as each floor pancakes down onto the one below.
What remains standing? The tall, indestructible core. Why does PBS fail to explain the complete disappearance of the Twin Towers cores?
Since the black smoke coming from the buildings means that the fire was oxygen-starved and could not have reached its maximum temperature of 1800 degrees Fahrenheit, and steel melts at a much higher temperature of 2500 degrees Fahrenheit, nearly 700 degrees hotter than the maximum temperature of the fire, how could cleanup crews have found melted steel in the basements? Why did Fire Engineering magazine tell us that no steel building has ever been destroyed by fire, that the World Trade Center investigation was a half-baked farce?
How do these firefighters describe the collapse of the North Tower?
We started running, floor by floor, instead of popping out.
It was like, it was if they had detonated.
Yeah,
as if they were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down.
Chief Albert Turry told me that there was another explosion which took place. So according to his theory, he thinks that there were actually devices that were planted in the building.
Almost looks like one of those planned implosions.
As if a demolition team set off. When you see the old demolitions of these old buildings, it folded down on itself and it is not there anymore.
Generally speaking, for a building to collapse in on itself like that, it would seem to indicate that there could have been an explosion, a bomb planted on the ground that would make the building collapse within itself.
By that evening, eyewitnesses and experts alike were rushing to defend the official narrative of events, claiming that raging jet fuel fires melted the steel inside the Twin Towers.
I saw this plane come out of nowhere and just ream right into the side of the Twin Tower, exploding through the other side. And then I witnessed both towers collapse, one first and then the second, mostly due to structural failure because the fire was just too intense.
Marlene Davis is the Dean of Architecture at the University of Tennessee. She calls the 110-story tall twin tower tube structures. That means there are no internal columns holding it up.
You know, when we saw this yesterday, people said, oh my goodness, there was a bomb on there. There must have been a bomb that collapsed. Must have been a bomb below. Right, that finished the job. Well, it turns out we heard from experts who said that, you know what, the fire on those floors, probably 1,500 degrees. Steel can only withstand so much because the steel structure that holds the building up was on the outside, and essentially the building started to melt and it gave way and it toppled.
Steel will melt.
No steel building has ever been destroyed by fire.
Just who was behind the terror attacks?
Larry Silverstein became landlord on July 24th. less than 2 months before the attack. He then had control of the maintenance and security departments, and he began to replace security personnel. Silverstein brought Frank Lowy into the deal to become landlord of the underground shopping mall. Lowy is a billionaire who owns shopping malls in several nations. After the towers disintegrated, Silverstein demanded insurance companies pay him twice what the policy stated, on the grounds that each tower underwent separate attacks. What a coincidence that after these guys got control of the World Trade Center, Osama bin Laden decided to destroy the entire complex.
CBS's Jim Stewart in Washington has been tracking events all day and has the latest, Jim.
We're told rescue workers have recovered a passport and the debris. It belonged to one of the dead hijackers.
Another development on Saturday, New York officials revealed at a news conference here in the city that a hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
Well, Dan, not far from here, a passerby found the passport of one of the hijackers. Evidence this disaster scene is also a crime scene.
These passports are so magical and so wonderful that, like Gollum's ring, they call to you. They call to who they want to find them, but not any normal mortal. No. The ring calls out only to FBI agents.
The 9/11 Commission says the CVRs and FDRs from American 11 and United 175 were not found. Yet, the FBI claims to have found the passport of Saddam al-Sakami, which managed to fly out of his pocket, through the explosion, and onto the streets of Manhattan below. So, 4 different black boxes, made from the most resilient materials known to man, were destroyed. Yet, a passport, made from a fragile material known as paper, managed to survive? Who writes this stuff?
In 2006, during the trial of Zacarias Moussaoui, the FBI managed to provide a multitude of evidence that appears to have survived a catastrophic crash in near pristine condition. Among the exhibits were a red bandana and a Kingdom of Saudi Arabia driver's license. Although a 757 managed to obliterate itself upon impact, paper and fabric managed to survive without a scratch. A 6-month investigation by the Senate Intelligence Committee concluded in December 2006 that Abel Danger did not identify Mohammed Atta or any other 9/11 hijacker. Can we be certain that the hijackers were radical Muslims on a suicide mission? Or is there a possibility that they were trained, funded, and protected in our own country?
Where is this mysterious chart that purportedly says that Atta was connected in some real way to these other hijackers? We'd love to see it.
The company responsible for the chart, Orion Scientific Systems, would claim that only 2 charts were produced and that Atta was not present on either one.
These charts were all done by the data mining efforts. So the Orion Corporation lied to the Senate Judiciary Committee staff. All data mining efforts, and yet the company said to the Senate Judiciary staff, we don't have any of those charts, they're not ours. Well, here they are, and their logos are on each one of them.
And last but not least, Mohammed Atta's father claimed to receive a phone call from his son on September 12th. On September 20th and 27th, Mueller admitted on CNN that there is no legal proof to prove the identities of the hijackers. So, if there's no proof that the hijackers were members of Al-Qaeda, or if they were even on the plane in the first place, what justification do we have for bombing Afghanistan?